my friends, Jerry Rosa here in the Rosa String Works Man Cave. You know how much fun I had yesterday? Well, it kind of continued on, pretty much went till about 1 o'clock in the morning. I'll tell you about that in a minute, or you'll see that in a video. About the only good news is that the temperature held up. It stayed like 35 instead of getting down below freezing. But then again, today it's kind of drizzling rain and little sleet out there, so it's not real pretty. It's just been a fun time just the last couple of days. Tried to work on the Ranger on the, I think you call those things an actuator. Instead of a hydraulic cylinder, it's an electronic actuator. In other words, you could think of this as the cylinder. There's a thing that comes out of here that pushes out, and it's electric. It's a screw. And anyway, it lifts the bed up and dumps the bed. Well, that thing has gone haywire. And what's really weird is I fixed it on the bench, and it tested on the bench with a battery, and it works just fine. Take it over to the four-wheeler, or the Ranger. Test it before I hook it up by hooking it up to the switch in the battery, and it seems to work just fine. Install it in the place it's supposed to go. It just kind of goes one way or the other way, and it doesn't do anything. It's just stupid. Just completely stupid. It's just, yeah. And it's not easy to install the darn thing. It's in a hard spot to get to. So you go all the trouble to install it, and then it just doesn't work. And it should work. It works perfectly fine on the desk. I don't know. It just doesn't make sense. So I guess I'll just be buying a new one. You know, there's really nothing wrong with the thing. It's just that it says I have to buy a new one. That's all. Well, here's another little side thing you didn't pay any extra for. I'll just show you this little video here. It might help you out if you have a need for a remote switch. Our door switch on our microwave has gone out. You notice I have it powered off. Got this little ingenious device here. It's connected up to a remote control up there, and that's what turns it on. So I can press this button, turn it on, as you can see. But if you open this up, listen. See, it's running. So that's not good, to have that mic door open with microwaves. So you can turn it off with this. This is just temporary. That's the only thing that's broke is this door switch. Like with it off, this little switch up in there is broken. I'm sure I could probably repair it. I probably could. But we're probably just going to wait. This thing's 20 years old probably. We're just going to wait until Menards has their 11% sale, and then we'll probably put in a new microwave. Anyway, I just thought I'd show you this little invention here. You can buy these remote control switches. Basically, all it does is it plugs into the wall, and then you plug your appliance into that, and then you can control it with a remote control. So you could think of that as using it for turning on or off a light. You could do a lot of things with that. So I just thought I'd point that out in case anybody else hadn't thought of that and was interested in using a device like that for some purpose. Most likely I'll fix that microwave one way or the other, so we'll have it as a spare for, our rental properties and or the shop down there. Like the switch is only about $9 or $10. It's not that hard to fix it. But she's looking to get a stainless steel one to match the other appliances. So there you go. It's just one of them deals. So here's where we stand on the wood furnace. Oh, actually, I guess you don't really realize how much trouble I'm having with the wood furnace. It's not really a problem with the furnace itself. It was just the luck. It was just the luck thing. I don't know. That's all I can think of. I really can't explain it. I went out there, I don't even know how to explain it. I tried to get the fire to catch on. It just lagged yesterday for some reason. Well, then about 5 o'clock, I go out there and I, pull all the coals together, build up a nice good fire. So I thought, well, I'll go back out at 7 and, throw in some more wood to really get the fire going. Well, I go back out there at 7 and the temperatures drop 10 degrees. And the wood's burning, but the temperatures drop 10 degrees. That doesn't even make sense. I mean, there's just no way you can explain that. So I, build up the fire some more, and I come back out in another 2 hours. I guess it's around 9 o'clock, and it's dropped another 10 or 12 degrees. And then I come back at 11 and it's dropped again. And I come back at 1 in the morning and it's still just barely like 96 degrees. It's not even getting above 100. Yet the wood is burning to some degree. It's just, you can't explain these things. They're just not explainable. So here's a little video about it. Well, I'm down here on the corner of JR's property, the county road and all that. And he wanted all these trees cleared out. And he's been working on it over a year or two. And, well, my friends, I told you how frustrating yesterday was. Every single thing that did. Well, it continued all the way till 1 o'clock last night. See the temperature there? It's 119 in case you can't read it because it's flickering there on your screen, even though it's not flickering in real life. Anyway, it's 119, and that's the warmest it's been since about 7 o'clock yesterday evening. Around 5 o'clock, it was like 140. So I stoked up the fire, raked all the coals together, got a good fire going. Came out 2 hours later to put some more wood in it. It had dropped 10 degrees, so it was down to like 125, 130, I don't know, somewhere in there. Came out 2 hours later, stoked it up again, of course. Came out 2 hours later, it was down another 10 degrees. Finally, it got all the way down to 94 degrees. One time, the logs were in an arch, just like the St. Louis Arch. It was just a big arch of logs, and the fire had burned out underneath it. I mean, I'm not lying. The logs were arched all the way from one end to the other, and the fire had burned out underneath it. I just can't believe it. So the one thing I think I know for sure is JR doesn't have to worry about a forest fire because his wood doesn't burn. I'm serious. I can't believe it. So I went this morning and cut a whole bunch of the cedar. And what I'll do is I'll mix it in with that stuff. Unbelievable. That's the hottest I've gotten it for a while. At least the temperature is actually rising now. So, and you might say, well, you just don't know how to build a fire. Well, let me tell you something. I bet you I've built probably several thousand more fires than the next most person on this vlog. I have been burning firewood my whole life, even when I would live with my parents. Then when I was on my own up in St. Louis County, we had wood stoves and wood inserts. And now we've got this monstrous furnace. Trust me, just in this furnace alone, I've built thousands and thousands of fires over the last 12 years. It's just nuts. I just can't understand how everything that could yesterday did and just kept going till 1 o'clock last night. I woke up at 5:30 this morning thinking, well, it should have caught on and be okay. It was down to 94 this morning again. Let's see what it looks like in there. You can see there's a hot fire. It's pitiful. I just can't believe it. So I'm going to load it up with some cedar and some more of that other wood, and I think that'll do the trick. I'll show you what that looks like once I get her loaded.
That's probably close to 2 wheelbarrows full of wood in there, believe it or not. You can see that it's raging fire. If that don't do it, I don't know what will. I just don't get it. The temperature at present is still 119. I'll check it just before the vlog. I think we have a few hours before the vlog, so I'll let you know what the temperature is at vlog time.
164. So it came up as soon as I put that cedar in there. I guess, I don't know what was, that wood is fine down there. It's dead, dry wood. It should have burned just fine. It was, you can try to explain it if you want to. I've been around this a few times. I've gone around the sun a couple times, in fact. And I probably have as much experience with a wood fire as anybody on this planet. And I'm not bragging. I'm just telling you black and white fact. Because who burns this much wood? I don't know anybody that does. It just was one of those days where it says, I don't care what you do. You can pour gas on this if you want to, but I'm not going to work for you today. That's just the way it was. Now it's working. It's, as soon as I put that cedar on there, of course the cedar burns like you're pouring kerosene on there. I don't know. It's working. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with the thermostat. There's nothing wrong with anything. It's working just fine. It just wanted to show me who was boss yesterday. You can believe what you want to. I've been through this before. I know what it is. I know it just sounds crazy to say it that way, but that's the truth of it. You can believe what you want. David Tharp was the first one in today. Ben Boyd is in there, and Joe Nigan. And let's see, the first question marks are going to be from, looks like Eric, I think. For the person asking about replacing bow hair, 051 Rosa violin bow hair, parts 1 and 2. Good luck. I think Eddie may have pointed those out the other day on that one too, but he also found one a little later. But I thought there was one within the last couple of years of me working. I really did. Maybe it wasn't the feature in the video, but I thought for sure I had one where I showed it. And it could just be that I filmed it and just never put it out. That's a possibility too. But anyway, let's see. Gary Cooper, that famous actor, says, what type hair is used on a fiddle bow? It's horsehair. Preferably white horsehair. And there's a particular breed of horses that I don't know why I'm saying it, but I think they're from Russia that are supposedly the best. I don't know. I just bought horsehair whenever I was hairing the bows. But, there is synthetics also, but the synthetics are just not near as good as horsehair is. Horsehair is by far the best. I'm sure it comes out, well, it might come out of their manes too. It's possible. Because some manes grow that long, but it most likely comes out of the tail. I've never made it from scratch, so I truly don't know. I'm just assuming, Now, Hildebrand's praying for everybody, and she said she was praying for Paul and Alan. And then I saw later down there during that video, I saw that Paul commented that Alan passed away, and I'm very sorry, Paul. Very, very sorry to hear that. Gino Hitch. Hi, Jerry and everyone. It's a beautiful day here in Monroe, Ohio. You were able to find more cedar for shingles. Did you get the Kawasaki going? Not really on either one of those. I haven't I don't know. I was going to take the Ranger out, and I was trying to fix up that darn dump bed on it, and I also want to fix the emergency brake on the Ranger. And so far, nothing has gone by plan, and so I haven't been out to look for cedar. The Kawasaki is presently in the shed. I just really should call that darn dealer back, but I'm so aggravated and so mad, I don't want to call him. I'm just so aggravated and mad. I'm just sure all I do is just scream at him. So, trying to use better judgment and not do it. And the $80 isn't even really the problem. It's just the fact that they did what they did. Don't get me wrong. I could use the $80, but the money is not important to me. I mean, it truly isn't. You can believe what you want. It just doesn't matter to me. It's the fact that they treated me the way they treated me. I just hate it. I just hate it to the nth degree. Ben Boyd. Jerry, in your last video, I saw that you fixed that little dark spot on your phone lens. How did you do that? No, I didn't. Nothing's fixed yet. I don't think it's fixed. No, it's still there. Whoops. Yeah, see. And then there's those two lines that are still there. I went ahead and ordered the quote-unquote OEM version of the screen because I just figured I'm not going to put the cheap one on there. I didn't return the cheap one yet either. I probably should return that, but I don't generally return very much stuff. It's kind of one of my flaws. David Tharp, there is a feral cat running around the neighborhood that can jump higher than my house. That's because he's got very powerful hind legs. Besides, my house can't jump at all. I told you yesterday about my pulling something in my back. I guess it was the muscles in my back, although it hurts right where my kidneys are. But I guess I pulled some muscles because, man, I'm telling you, it was tough getting out there cutting that cedar today. It really was painful. Let me back up the truck, and I forgot to mention about the funeral. I do have the funeral arrangements, and if you haven't heard, it was for Beverly's mother. Beverly is the gal that plays and sings in our band, and her mother passed away last Friday. The funeral is going to be this coming Monday, and there will be no vlog on this coming Monday, this next Monday. So there will be no vlog that day. Moving on down. Wavy gravy. On my last job interview, a manager said, for a man with no experience, you are certainly asking for higher salary. I said, well, work is much harder than when you don't know what you are doing. Yeah, work is much harder when you don't know what you're doing. Yeah, there you go. I have to agree with that. Let's see. David Tharp. I took the kids to the zoo last weekend. I'm going back tomorrow to see how they're doing. That's what I should have done with JR. Except the thing is, he would have fit in so well. He never would have left there anyway, especially in the monkey cage. Let's see. Wavy gravy. When I was a kid, my dad took me to the zoo. They thanked him for returning me. Rodney Dangerfield. Let's see. Sky Roberts. Our microwave oven is 25 years old and still working. I did have to replace that same switch as well. Easy peasy. Yeah, I'm not really, it's not the work of switching it. She just wants a different one because of the stainless steel, look, and so I figured we might as well just get a new one, and after we get the new one, I'll take it apart and fix it, on the bench down there. Scott Roberts, sounds to me like the thermostat regulator on your furnace is kaput. No, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. In fact, it's working, in my opinion, it's working the best it's ever worked since we had the furnace, because I put that new one on there, and I set it with only a 12-degree margin for kicking on and off, and that's really working great when it decides it wants to work great. But for whatever reason, yesterday was just one of them days where it didn't matter. I'm not kidding you. I honestly think I could have thrown gas on there yesterday, and I don't think it would have made any difference. It just said, I'm not going to burn for you today. Too bad, so sad. Just go in the house and shut up. So I did. I'm serious. I know it sounds stupid to say that. I know it. I know how it sounds, but it's the way it felt. I'm telling you. Ronald Todd, the wood on your burning may have came off JR's ground down there, and it may be frozen and waterlogged. Well, I don't think it was either of those. It's very dry wood. Now, it might be the kind of wood. I'll give you that much, that it could be the kind of wood, because it is a weird wood. It's not your normal kind of wood. It's I think this is all dead hackberry. I know the greener stuff is hackberry. And maybe hackberry just doesn't burn very well. You know, I don't know. I've never had much experience burning hackberry. You know what I'm saying? I burned oak and walnut and, locust and, maple and cherry and you name it. I pretty much burned it. But hackberry, you don't see a whole lot of that. But he just happens to have a lot of that down there in that area, And so that's what I'm burning. So maybe that's it. Maybe that's all it is. I don't know. But I threw some cedar in there, and that cedar sure burns hot. Scott Roberts, yeah, the wood probably was the problem. Yep, I kind of think it was. Just had to hit on the same day where everything else was going wrong. Let's see. Bill Rhodes, Jerry, I was wondering, does barometric pressure have anything to do with that? Well, it's possible. I don't doubt that it might have, David Tharp, I know what it is with the furnace. It's a Rosa thing. Yeah, that's exactly what at least that's what it felt like yesterday for sure. With everything else, it just wouldn't work yesterday. And it really hasn't changed too much today, other than the fact that I think I've got the fire going now, I think. But, when I go out there in a couple more hours, it may have changed its mind again. You just don't know. You just don't know. SSD Bling. A teacher told me many years ago not to worry about spelling. She said that in the future there will be autocorrect software for which I am eternally grapefruit. That's funny. Yeah, well, when you started that off, the first thing that came into my mind when you said a teacher told me that I don't have to worry about spelling, well, the first thing came into my mind, and some of you may already have thought of this because you've heard me say it, was that Cash's teacher that was giving him music lessons for several years, like from the time he was 6 years old to the time he was 9 years old, kept telling him that he didn't have to worry about timing. It's like, are you kidding me? That is the worst advice I've ever heard anybody get in their whole life. But he's got over it now. His timing is good now. But boy, I tell you, for 3 years there, where it was miserable in the jam sessions, we couldn't play with that kid for nothing. His timing was atrocious. Paul Akers, have you ever used flexible abalone inlay material? And if so, can you talk about it? Well, I'd probably have to say no. I don't think I did. When you say flexible, and so that means it's curvy, so I would assume that means it's plastic. Because I don't think you can make actual abalone shell that's flexible. I don't think you could. I mean, that stuff's as brittle as glass. Well, it's the same. Well, it's not the same as glass, but it's basically just like glass in the sense that it's super hard and super brittle. And you can make it as thin as you want, and you might get a tiny bit of flex out of it, but you're not going to bend it around any curve or anything. So no, I haven't. So I'm assuming that's what you're talking about. Now, on the other side of the coin, I have used materials where they have bonded lots of shell together into a plate. But it's just little tiny strips glued together up by edge, and it's just where they make a larger flat plate out of the shell. But it's still super brittle. So no, I haven't used anything that's flexible. I mean, other than plastic bindings, of course. G&P Old Marine Shop. Hi, Jerry. What would cause a guitar neck to tune open on the 3 low strings fine, and all 3 open strings are sharp 1 fret when closed at the 5th fret? Well, that would mean that your saddle is a little bit close to where it should be. In other words, your saddle should be back, I don't know how far, because I don't know how sharp, and I'm not there to see it and hear it, but my guess, the typical guess would be somewhere in the neighborhood of a 1/16 of an inch. It's probably sharp by about that much. In other words, the saddle probably needs to be moved back by about a 1/16 of an inch. Tell you what you can do, and it's not too hard to do, although it might be in your case. It just depends on the tools and your experience and all that stuff. But if you since I don't have a saddle here, we'll pretend this is your saddle, and you got your edge. So if you just take on those 3 strings that are sharp, if you just take and bevel the front edge, like the neck's going out this way. So, your peg head's out this way. It's that way. Can't get all this on camera. Anyway, so you would bevel the front edge of this off. The edge that's closest to the peg head, you would bevel that edge off and bevel it off to where it's almost to the back, but not, you don't want to make it a sharp knife edge. You want to leave just a little bit of flatness there, but bevel off most of it and see if that doesn't fix your problem. That would be, again, without seeing it and hearing it, I can't say 100% that's the whole thing, but it's about a 90%er there is what I'm telling you. Let's see. Now that's assuming I even read your question right, because that's the first problem I have. Tim Ricketts, I have had days when the fire just doesn't put out much heat, humidity, I don't know. Yeah, again, it could have been something. That's why when you said the thing about the pressure, it's possible it has something to do with it. Humidity may have had something to do with it. I don't know. And it's very likely that the wood itself had the most to do with it. It's probably that darn hackberry stuff. But, I burned lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of wood, and I barely ever have a problem. I mean, every once in a while you have something hitch, but yesterday was the day. It just was the day, man. That's why I'm wearing my Batman shirt. I am Batman. And, I do actually have the best chance of being Batman since I have a bat cave. Let's see. G&P Old Marine Shop. It's nuts. Old strings cause that. Neck is straight. It's Guild Acoustic 1971. Well, yeah, this is just me talking. You can take it for what it's worth, but I don't see that strings will ever cause a sharp or a flat problem. In other words, if it's open and it's noting correctly, when you note it, it should still note correctly. I don't care if your strings are new or old or shiny or whatever, rusty. That shouldn't have any effect on it, because that's a mathematical distance is where your problem comes in on that. You shorten a string, it gets sharper, and therefore if your bridge is slightly forward, it just got sharper. That's all there is to it. I mean, you can believe what you want, and there's so many people have so many theories on stuff like this, and it's black and white. It's 100%. It's not sort of, kind of, I wonder. It's black and white. It's 100%. So believe what you want, but it's generally speaking, it's just simply where things are placed. Now, it's also possible, but kind of highly unlikely, that your fret is in the wrong place. I mean, that's a possibility. It's not very likely, because generally you just have to kind of assume your fretboard is correct, because they make those at the factory and they've got those cut out perfectly, and they're mathematically cut. People think, well, they just pick a place to cut those and that's it. No, it's literally measured from a certain spot, and then you have a certain fret scale, and that's it. I mean, everything is exactly in its spot by 1/1000th of an inch, and it's just black and white. That's why, and I'll say it to my dying breath, you don't screw with the nut. Everybody wants to monkey with, cutting this off of the nut and changing this on the nut, and, no, you don't mess with the nut. The nut, that's where everything is measured from. So if everything's set up correctly, your nut has nothing to do with anything on that. It's just where your string's set, period. It shouldn't have anything to do with your intonation whatsoever, other than, it can have something to do with your setup. It can have something to do with buzzing sounds and stuff like that. But I'm talking about, if you're just talking intonation, period, only intonation, your nut has nothing to do with it. Other than that's where your intonation starts, and you don't want to screw with that. You don't want to bevel that. You don't want to, offset it, or I don't know. People just have these weird ideas that this is going to, and then they do something and they think that by their ear it sounded so great, and that's the way you're supposed to do it from that point on. And it's wrong. Just wrong, 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 wrong. 100% wrong. Not 99.9, 100% wrong. There you go. Take it for what it's worth. You guys like to hear rants. Let's see. Moving on down here. Joseph Wallace. Jerry, do you ever need to add water to your wood stove? Yeah, I do add water I don't know. There's a thing on the front. It's got a lever that you pull, and then it shoots the water into this clear tube, and it tells you if it's full or not, basically. So I check that every once in a while. And I did fill it up earlier this year, and it's got like 400 gallons. It's not quite 400 gallons, it's like 390 some gallons in it. And I also added more of that additive that keeps it from rusting. Let's see. Ben Boyd, I was referring to that little dark spot on your outside videos. Oh, okay. I got you. I thought you were talking about on the screen thing here, because I got that problem too. Yeah, you're right. On that little thing that's down there that's usually right about there, wiggling like that. Well, I've learned, and if I remember to do it, and I don't always remember, but I've learned that if I zoom in, it's zoom out to the 0.5, instead of 1, you can do 1 times, 2 times, 3 times, 5, and it's got a 0.5 times, which is half. So if I zoom out to the 0.5, where it actually shows a bigger picture, for whatever reason, that thing goes away. And if I remember to do that, it goes away. So that's the thing. So the ones where it went away, you saw me do that. Let's see here. It bounced on me, guys. I'm sorry. Oh my gosh, it really must have bounced a long ways. My goodness, I can't find it. I got to get busy here because there's a lot of comments that I didn't. Oh my gosh. Okay. All right, I found it. Okay, so there's Ben Boyd's comment that I just answered. Okay, Hugh O'Connor, we have an ordinary indoor wood burner, and I have seen kiln-dried logs where all the flames did was lick around the logs without actually burning them for ages. Perhaps some wood just won't burn. Yeah, it's something like that. I was trying to joke in the video. You probably didn't hear my joke, but I said he doesn't have to worry about forest fires because his wood won't burn, you know. But I mean, it actually was burning. It just wasn't getting hot. See, that's another difference too. And this is a black and white difference again, because I've tested it, and I've tested it with thermometers and tried to keep you can't keep everything the same when you're doing a test like this. I get that, but you keep it as close to the same as you can. So it was years ago. In fact, it was back in probably the late 70s when I did this. But I had an indoor wood stove, and as close to as accurate as I could, I loaded the stove the same way, but with different kinds of wood. You know, I did this on different days, you know. So like I tested walnut, I tested oak, and, you know, maple, and, you know, whatever I could get. I tested a bunch of different kinds of wood. I don't know, 6 or 7, 8, 9, I don't even know how many I tested, but it was a bunch of them. And by far, the hottest was locust. You know, the thorny locust stuff, the ones with the great big long thorns on it. I mean, if you can stand cutting that stuff burns a blue flame, man. I mean, it burns hot. It was significantly hotter. It wasn't like 5 degrees hotter. It was like, you know, 50 degrees hotter or more. I don't remember the numbers anymore, but it was way hotter. It was not even close. One of the worst was walnut, believe it or not. I mean, it just didn't put out that much heat. And that proves to be true here in my wood furnace too. I know that. But occasionally I burn walnut because we got a lot of it here on the farm, and there's a lot of tops, and trees die, and, you know, and some of it ain't no good for wood, you know, for lumber, so I burn it, you know. And it's not that great. Walnut's not that great for burning. Really, you know, on the average, your best is probably oak. That's your average. But if you can get the locust, and if you can stand cutting it with those dang thorns, man, I'm telling you, that stuff's hot. It's just flat hot. So this stuff that I'm burning from JR's, I didn't have any experience with it, really. I mean, I have burnt a little bit of it here and there, like threw on a few pieces with all the other wood, and it burned up fine, so I just assumed it was okay. But apparently, if you're just burning it solid, and that's all you're burning, it probably ain't that good. But it seems to work okay if you blend in a little cedar with it. So that's what I think the problem really is. Paul Lanier, thank you all, both Jerry and kind words. Dottie and others sent prayers for Alan. Yeah, that's horrible. So sorry. Scott Roberts, go in the house and shut up. That made me laugh. Well, that's the way it seemed. You know, I mean, I'm not that goofy, crazy to believe that. It's the kind of thing. It was the kind of day that makes you. I don't believe in horoscopes, but it makes you want to think you need to go read your horoscope. You know, it's that kind of day. I've said that before, and other people jump on me. You believe in horoscopes? Well, I'm unsubscribing. Oh, shut up. It's just a figure of speech. You know what I mean? I just say things a lot of times just as a figure of speech. It's not like I believe it with all my heart, you know. And that's the way it felt yesterday. It was like, just get out of here and leave me alone. It was the way the furnace seemed like. It was like it wasn't going to do nothing no matter if I poured gas on it. It just wasn't going to work. Well, then when I cut that cedar this morning, it seems to be singing a little different tune now. Let's see. Joe, are Taylor guitar shims supposed to be glued in place? Taylor guitar shims. When you say shims, I'm not really, I mean, there's a million kinds of shims, and I can't think of any of them that are any good for anything except for when you're building the instrument, maybe, and then those would be glued in place. So I'm not sure what shims you're talking about. If you're talking about shimming the saddle or shimming the nut, then the answer is you don't use shims for those things. And if you are using shims for those things, it's not the best. It's not horrible. I mean, it's not the end of the world, but you don't want to use shims under your saddle. You don't want to use shims under your nut or anything like that. But if you are going to use them, regardless, then yeah, they should be glued in place, in my opinion, because they should be solid. Not necessarily under the saddle, but under the nut, I would say they ought to be glued in place. But I don't know. You really shouldn't be using shims, period. You should cut a new saddle or cut a new nut and make it work, or whatever it takes to make it work without a shim. So if I'm missing your point and it's some other kind of shim, well then say something, because I that's the only thing I can think of. Let's see. Scott Kern, what brand of paint sprayer should I get for spraying guitars, and also which is good for doing detail work? Well, Scott, that's honestly probably not my area of expertise. I had, a DeVille Biss or Devil Biss, or however you want to say that word, DEVIL, DEV. Yeah, BISS, I think. It's spelled like devil with BISS on the end, I think. I'm not even sure if that's the right spelling. But anyway, I had that type. And that's one of your better name brand ones. And it worked great. I didn't have any problem with it. You can't leave anything in a sprayer like that. You got to keep it cleaned out. And I mean, like when you're done, you need to clean it thoroughly, because especially lacquer. Lacquer's like WD-40. You know how it seeks down into cracks and everything? Well, lacquer does that too, and you pretty much need to take it apart and clean it. That's what you need to do. Did I ever do that? Not very often, I'll be honest, and I would suffer the consequences and then have to clean it before my next use. You know what I'm saying? So lacquer, when you're spraying lacquer, it gets into everything. So you just need to keep whatever gun you're using, you need to keep it really clean. I think almost any spray gun these days will be just fine. Let's see. And as far as detail work, well then, if you're talking about really detail work, well, you might also want to be looking into a airbrush. And I think mine was, again, another name brand. It's not necessarily the best. In fact, it probably isn't the best, but I think mine was a Posh or something like that, which I think is a common one, not necessarily the best one. But I don't know a lot about airbrushes for sure. But the DeVille Biss brand sprayers are pretty good. Now, they're a little more pricey than your average. I don't... I'd tell you more, Scott, if I knew. I just don't know that much about that. Cup of Cool, how much would Jerry's wood burner burn if Jerry's wood burner would burn wood? Sorry, I couldn't help myself. Yep, there you go. That's a pretty good one, though, because it was applicable yesterday. Cup of Cool, I'll go pound some sand to make up to you. Okay, yeah. My dad's saying was pound sand in a rat hole. He doesn't have enough sense to pound sand in a rat hole. I don't know what. I don't know how come that applies, but it does apparently. But he would always say that he didn't have enough sense to pound sand in a rat hole. Okay, fine. David Tharp, I agree with President Calvin Coolidge. He didn't say much, but one thing he said was, it's a poor kind of mind that can only think of one way to spell a word. It's an even poorer kind of mind that reads it that slow. I watch different videos all the time, and like that little... the catchphrase is genius girl. That I don't know what she is. I don't know if she's Chinese, Japanese, Taiwanese. I don't know what she is. Korean maybe. I watch her, repair lots of things. And at the very beginning, she talks in her native tongue, but they've got it sped up on top of everything else. So she's really speaking fast. And then they've got the captions underneath it, and they go by just as fast. Now, I would think probably the average person that can read those. I can't read any of them. Drives me crazy when people put words up on there and they only leave them up there for a few seconds. I can't read them. I just can't read them. So I either have to, if I really am interested, I have to back it up and pause it to read it, or, just forget it and do without. Let's see. Joe, saddle is getting pulled towards the neck. Well, that's not a good thing. You don't want that. There's 2 or 3 real problems with that. For one, intonation. Your intonation's going to be off if your saddle gets pulled forward as little as a 1/16 of an inch. I mean, even less than that, it's going to make a difference. But a 1/16 of an inch is going to be a big difference on your intonation. And it's going to affect every fret. It's not going to affect just one fret. It's going to affect every fret between that saddle and the nut. Every fret's off if that saddle's forward. So that's the first problem. So you want your saddle straight up and down. But the real problem, and the bigger problem that I have seen a lot of times, is when your saddle's pulled forward, it becomes a wedge. And you know what a wedge is? It's a tool to break stuff. And when you, or a lever really is what it really is. And when those strings are pulling on that lever, and they're going to crack your bridge. And I've seen it done many times where the bridge is cracked. So get that fixed. Now, how do you fix that? All right, well, the main way to fix it would be to make a new saddle that fits perfectly snug down in the slot. That's the way to fix it. That's what I'd recommend that you do. Is there any other workarounds? For me, no, there really aren't. I mean, that's pretty much the only thing you can do is make a new saddle that fits it snug. That's why I was measuring everything in thousands of inches. Like I could, go over there and, maybe you can eyeball fit it and do it without measuring in thousands of inches. Don't get me wrong. But it really helps if you've got a caliper that you can measure it. Like you go over there and you go, boy, it just almost there, and you measure it and you say, well, it's 121 thousandths. All right, well, I'll take off 1,000th and see if it fits. And so you take, on my thickness sander, I could literally take off 1,000th of an inch. And so I'd take off 1,000th, I'd go back over there and it's still a little tight. Well, I'd take off another 1,000th, so it's really helpful if you can work in thousandths. It's great. I know most people can't really do that. So the thing you do is when you get really close, then change to doing it by hand. Like maybe take your saddle and put it on some sandpaper and do that, on a piece of glass or something so it stays flat, and then test it and then do it a little more and test it and do a little more and test it. You can do it by hand and by eye without all the technical stuff, but it just takes you longer. But for sure, that's what you want to do. You want to get a good, snug, tight. It'll also help your sound, too. You'll notice that your sound is more crisp and clear. Anyway, enough on that, I guess. Wavy gravy. Jerry, my neighbor tells me he reversed the polarity on his furnace and turned it into an air conditioner. I think he's full of hot air. I don't think that'd work here. Let's see. It scrolled on me again. Sorry. Okay, I found it. Gene P. Old Marine Shop says, thanks. Didn't think only 1/16 would throw it off a whole step. Well, it won't throw it off a whole step, you understand. But when you're going for perfect intonation, it throws it off from perfect intonation. It won't. I don't know how to explain that. Let me try to think of a good example of that. And, sometimes your mind just is kind of blank. In other words, with it straight up and down, let's just say it's utopia and it's perfect, okay? Everything's perfect. It's perfect. The nut's perfect. Your frets are perfect. Okay, you note it anywhere and you get a true perfect note. 100%. It's a 16th forward. Okay, you note it now, and really nothing else changed. You've got it tuned open. You got it tuned open to the perfect note. So you got it tuned to your E, or let's just say E. and you note it at the first fret. Well, it's just a hair sharp. And you note it at the 7th fret. It's just a hair sharp. And you note it at the 12th fret. It's just a hair sharp. Well, that means your saddle's just a little too close. You need to move it back. That's really the black and white 100%. That's what it is. And it's 100%. Again, all these people with their theories and their ideas and all that is just wrong. Black and white 100%, they're wrong. Because that's all there is to it. It's a mathematical number from this point to this point, and all these frets need to be at their mathematical point also. That's just it. Scott Kern, 100. Is that a, wow. Is that a super chat for $100? Well, my gosh, Scott, that's just like awesome and then some. Thank you very, very, very kindly. And then I look up above and I see he's got a comment. It says, and by the way, Scott, I only read the ones that have the question marks in front of them. It says, how do you know a luthier is worried? He frets a lot. I must have been one of the most worried guys in town because I did a whole lot of fretting back in my day. Yeah, it says that's the first super on this live stream. Well, thank you very kindly there, Scott. I really do appreciate that. Scott Roberts, dang, Scott Kern, now Jerry can go to a real repair to get that cow fixed. Let's see. Moving on down. Joe, B string rings like a bell. Okay, when you have a string that rings out more than other strings, I seem to notice it on mandolins more than I notice it on guitars. Probably because I play mandolin more than I play guitars. I've heard it on other instruments too, but it seems like I notice it on mandolins a lot. It's because, and on mandolin, I'm just going to use that as the example. It applies to the guitar exactly the same way, is that like when you're carving the top of a mandolin, you're always trying to get it to a certain note. And lots of people will carve, mandolins like to go to a D. They just somehow can end up at a D. Well, when you hit your D string, man, it rings like a bell, So my guess is that your guitar, if it's a guitar that we're talking about, well, I guess it is because it's B string. I'm a little slow sometimes. Anyway, your B string ringing like a bell would mean that it's probably somehow tuned to a B note. So how do you avoid stuff like that? Well, when you're carving and like carving braces and tap tuning and all that, you try never to hit a string. You try to always get a note that comes in between a string, like a flat or a sharp or something like that. Or it's just a note that's just not on your mandolin, like a B. You just try to find something that's not there. And that helps so that it gives a more even tone across all the strings. Bingo. I bet you guys knew that already, didn't you? Let's see. Scott Roberts. Scott Kern, I hear you. I've learned a lot from watching his videos. Well, thank you. Scott Roberts, that $100 should be worth at least one Bob rant. Like I said, I've already ruined it. I must have done perfection on that first one. There's no way I could do another one and make it even sort of add up or stack up. One of these days, I'll remember something he did that's burned my rear end again, and I'll tell you about it. It wasn't just one thing. Trust me, it wasn't just one thing. BH Ringer, my buddy wants to get a nose job and ask which one I like the most, but I didn't answer. After all, you can pick your friend. I already know where this one's going. You can pick your nose, but you can't pick your friend's nose. I knew there where that one was going. And let's see. Moving on down. Scott Kern says he doesn't have any question marks, but He says, locust wood is what the old moonshiners used to burn because it burns hot and not much smoke. I'm telling you, there's a huge difference. It's a huge difference. I'm not just saying it to hear my head rattle. It's a huge difference. I was floored. You know, like I had the oven thermometer sitting in the same place on the stove on everything. And, you know, I was getting fluctuations on every kind of wood, but it wasn't that much, 10 degrees, 5 degrees, that kind of thing. And there's so many variables that could cause that might not have anything to do with the kind of wood. But when it jumps like 50 or 75 degrees or whatever it jumped, and I don't remember, but it was a lot, I'm going, whoa, that's way different, And then I repeated it to prove that was the case, and yeah, it burns that hot. So telling you locust burns really hot. I remember reading an article way back in the 70s somewhere that this was just some guy talking. I don't know if he knew what he was talking about. He probably didn't. But he said, if you had, I think he said, well, I want to say he said 12 acres. I don't even know if it would take 12 acres, honestly, because the fast as that stuff grows. He said if you had 12 acres, I think it was 12, of this locust wood, if you had 12 acres of locust wood and you burned wood all the time, you could never burn it all because that stuff grows so fast and, and it puts out so much heat. You'd never burn it all. You could never burn it all if you had 12 acres, and you were just using it for your own self. I would say I'd even go down to 1 or 2 acres for your average person burning wood. Now, it may not be true for me because the way as much as I burn, but on your average person, I'd say if you had 1 or 2 acres of it, you could probably burn it the rest of your life and never worry about it. Never worry about running out. Did I ever burn older apple? I am positive I've burned different fruit trees over the years, but I don't remember anything specific because generally you don't have that much of it and you just throw it in there with something else. So yeah, I've done it, but I don't remember anything specific about it, honestly. GNP Old Marine Shop. Top spruce has turned very dark. I sanded it smooth. I just spray it with clear lacquer to look like original natural finish, like when new or is stained lightly first. Well, again, I this finish thing is, I just have to say, that's just not where I feel like I had my expertise. I was just barely passable on finishes, in my opinion. I don't feel like I was very good at that. So honestly, I don't know what to tell you. You'd be better off getting advice probably from somebody else on the finish. But I'm trying to think if I could even give you an idea on that. I sanded it smooth. Can I just spray it with clear lacquer to look like original natural finish, like when new or stained? I would just say spray it. That's what I always did. I just sprayed it right over the top of it. Now, a lot of people swear by, these, I don't know, pore filler, grain filler type finishes and stuff, I'll tell you what I really do think is a good finish, and honestly I do, is CA glue. It's a good undercoat it's at least an undercoat, if not the whole finish. It really works well. It fills the pores quick. It's just a great hard finish is CA glue. Now the problem is, when I was doing this, I never did that because it stunk so bad. Well, now they've got the odorless CA glue. It's, I don't know. Do what you want, but it wouldn't be wouldn't hurt my feelings to try CA glue as a finish on an instrument like that. In fact, I know lots of people that have done it. I would say it would be a great finish myself. Tom Crow, okay, let's see. Tom Crow, the Taylor bolt-on neck shims are not glued. Yeah, if they're bolt-on necks, I would say not glue for sure. if that's what the kind of shims you're talking about. David Tharp, I think he's talking about the neck shims Taylor have bolt-on necks. Yep. If that's what you're talking about, definitely you don't glue those. See, Joe says, my Taylor has wood shims under the neck and below the fingerboard bolt-on neck. Yeah. Well, in that case, you would not do that. You would not glue them in. Yeah, I don't know. The fewer the shims, the better is what I always say on stuff like that. But you got to do what you got to do. You have to shim out to make it work, you know. Yeah, and he says a shim at the dovetail joint. Well, all of that would just be, if it's all bolt-on, then you don't glue that. The spoken song, whenever my dad would get mad at me, he'd yell, you can't even be wrong right. Yeah, there you go. Thanks for the info, Joe says. You're welcome. Scott Turn says some Taylor guitars have a removable neck that allows for making easy reset, kind of like an electric guitar. Those type of shims don't require any glue. Yeah, that's true. Okay, Joe, one shim is glued in place. The one shim is glued in place. Well, yeah, there you go. I don't see as it hurts anything if they are glued in place. So I don't think you have to unglue it unless you need to take it out to, shim it a different direction or something. I would say you're fine leaving it like it is, as long as it's not causing a problem. Gino Hitch, Jerry, maybe Joe was talking about when you are doing a neck reset. I've seen you put a wedge in there. Yeah, well, when I do it that way, for sure, I definitely glue those in. So I want to make it like a solid neck. I don't want it being some loose shim in a neck joint when you're fitting them in like I fit them. Now, those aren't bolt-on. That's a different thing. When you're talking bolt-on, that's a different thing. Cup of Cool, just one time would you say what you mean and stop beating around the bush? LOL. Yeah, about the intonation and frets and stuff. Well, I'm telling you, it's just black and white. It is. It's 100% black and white. It's not an iffy thing. It's not sort of kind of what do you think? It's nothing like that. It's black and white. And if you get it black and white, it works 100%. And you don't have to do all this Mickey Mouse crap that everybody thinks they have to do. Because it's wrong. It's just wrong. It's much simpler than, in other words, don't make it complicated if it's not complicated. And that's not complicated. It's just black and white, 100%. GNP Old Marine Shop says, so a loose saddle is one thing, and I imagine if the bridge is just a tad lifted up would also cause the same issue. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, and your bridge lifting up can cause so many other things. It can cause the intonation issues. It can, cause that kind of problem in the sound and not getting a good clear sound and a real punchy sound. You won't get any of that with a lifting bridge. But where your real problem comes in on a lifting bridge is that it's pulling, and it's pulling in just certain areas now because the middle's not touching, and maybe it's pulling out on the ends, or maybe it's vice versa. Maybe it's only pulling in the middle and the ends are loose. It just depends on how it is. But regardless, it's putting all the pressure in one spot, and that pressure in one spot's going to warp your top, break your braces. It's going to do something wrong. It ain't going to be good, whatever it is. So you want to get that fixed. Let's see. Moving on down. Wavy Gravy. I heard that when old Bob was born, the doctor was confused when he first saw him, so he slapped both ends. Yeah, he. Let me just say it a different way. He needed a good slapping. That's what he really needed. He needed that badly. David Tharp, when I was born, I was so ugly the doctor slapped my mother. I think that's another Rodney Dangerfield. Steve Mays, just my opinion, but a man would have to be desperate for firewood to deal with those giant thorns on a honey locust. You know, Steve, when I first bought this property, another Bobism is that he let all the thorn trees grow on the property. And I mean, he let them grow everywhere. They were just everywhere. Well, you got to deal with it one way or the other. You know, you can either just let them grow and deal with all the thorns that get stuck in your tires and stuff. And we had a ton of that, trust me. I mean, a ton of it. And the fact that your animals can step on those thorns, you know, like your horses and stuff. I mean, so you got to do something with them one way or the other. You either live with it or you do something about it. Well, because I was doing something about it, I thought there's no point in wasting the wood, and I know it burns hot, so I burned all of it in my wood furnace. Now, what I did was I just took my chainsaw and just went down through there and just slice the burrs, the thorns right off. I just skimmed the tree with my chainsaw. It didn't take but a second or two. I made sure to be wearing good boots and stuff and pay attention where I was walking. And then I would take my skid steer, because generally speaking, I was digging out the roots and everything. I want to get rid of them because those things will grow back they're like a weed. They just grow back. You can't just cut the stump off. They will grow back. So I'm digging them out anyway, so I've already got the skid steer there, so I just bury the thorns or scrape them off. So for me, it wasn't that big a deal to deal with it. But for your average person, I agree, it would be kind of a pain. Ronald Todd, I use CA glue on wine bottle stopper that I've made. Very nice and durable finish. Yeah, it works good. It does make a good finish. I know Scott used it on some of the stuff he built. He used CA glue as a finish. Scott Roberts, a loose nut used to own Jerry's farm. That kind of loose nut is also a problem. Yeah, that's for sure. He was a loose nut, and that's putting it nicely. Scott Roberts, no, the doctor slapped Bob's mother. Yeah. For sure. I don't think they should have slapped Bob. I think they should have punched him. I think they should just let him have it. Wavy gravy. Old Bob made a major contribution to humanity by not being part of it. Yeah, he's gone on now. But seriously, the guy was a mess. He just lied about everything. I mean, literally, if his mouth was moving, he was lying. I've known a few people like that. I had a cedar guy that came here. This was before I got my sawmill and all this kind of thing. Now I'm glad it didn't work out, but I wanted to get rid of all these cedar trees on the farm because the conservation people told me that, you ought to just get rid of them. Just get rid of all of them. So I contacted a cedar mill, and this guy came out, and I, talked to him a while, and I said, yeah, you can cut my cedar. But he wasn't connected with the cedar mill. I just want to be clear. This was an independent contractor that took stuff to the cedar mill. Somehow or another, I got a hold of this guy. I don't remember how. I don't think the cedar mill recommended him because I don't think they liked him either. But anyway, I got a hold of this guy, and he just talked so big. He was just like Bob's brother. I'll cut all them cedar down. I'll get all of them, that kind of thing. So he's just one of those big talkers that you knew if his mouth was, you could just know right up front. But I thought, well, what the heck? What have I got to lose? Might as well let him cut him. Well, then he hired JR, and he hired some of JR's friends to help, and he promised them $20 an hour, and he was going to do this and he was going to do that, and it all fell through. And the guy was just a total butthead. I mean, just a total butthead. Well, as it turned out, it was to my favor because I'm glad the cedar trees didn't go away because I've used them for lots of things. I've built, my different deer hunting houses and my tower stand and now this water wheel thing. And so for me, the cedar lumber has actually turned out to be good stuff. I really like using it. For me, it's just as good as using store-bought lumber. I think it's great stuff. Let's see, moving on down. I think I may have hit the end there. I'm not really sure where I'm at. So Bob would have made a fine politician. Sad to say, yeah, I think he would have. Wavy gravy. Bob once won a plaque for the guy who had the most plaqueless teeth. That's a possibility. Sky Roberts, Bob's brother imitation will hold me over for a while now. Thanks, Jerry. Oh, yeah, that guy was a scuzz bucket, too. He really was. I ran him off. After I found out that he stiffed the boys, and I don't know what else happened. I mean, I was getting money back from the sawmill because, well, the sawmill, I guess, knew this guy, and so whenever he would bring my logs to their sawmill, they would send me a check from their account. In other words, they would hold out from him and send me my money because they knew he wouldn't pay me. Well, that's how this guy was a scuzz bucket. Well, I didn't know that when I allowed him to do the work, but as soon as he stiffed the boys, I went out there and I grabbed him up and I told him to get his butt in gear and get out of here. And I mean, I didn't say it politely. Let's just say it that way. He got the message and he got out of here, and in a hurry. In fact, he left a bunch of stuff here, which was just fine with me. I used it. Anyway, that's it. You all have a good day. I'm going to hopefully have a better day, hoping things go better. And I will see you tomorrow with something else. Thanks for being here. And thanks again, Steve, for that. Scott Kern for that super chat. Thank you very much. We will see you tomorrow.